eXpd8 makes it easy to manage your precedence and all your general correspondence documents. Let's have a look. All of your standard templates or precedents are kept in one area called Template Editor. In here, every area of law you cover has a corresponding folder where the relevant template or standard documents are kept. It's easy to either import them or create them right from scratch. First, we would choose on a category on the left, and on the right-hand side of the screen, we're now seeing the contents of that folder. Doing a right-click and New would create a new template for us. In giving it a name, you can see then it then gives it a location or address. Double-clicking on it opens up that document. In this case, I've gone to starting from scratch, so it's going to be a blank Word document. Right, first place you need to start is deciding what your margins are for your letterhead. So if you know that your page layout should be, or your margin should be something specific, go and change it to that. Right. Now let's look in here. In this version of Word 2010, the following items hidden in add-ins. If you've got an earlier version of Word, this should be visible for you on your standard Word toolbar. Can you see here the power bar? It says current date, client title, contact ID. That's what's going to give us easy access to data we've already captured in eXpd8 and allow it to be merged into the various files we're going to use it within. The first one of these drop-downs relates to any data we have captured on the summary page of our file. Let's look and see what I mean by that. In a file, there's your summary page. So any field on this page, so whether it's who owns the file type, the file code, the file name, etc., they're available to you in the first drop-down. There are two additional fields available to you there. One is the current date. Now this is very handy. I would always say to you, never use Word's auto-dating in a Word document because you run the risk of it updating when you reopen the document again in many months' time. However, if you use it from the eXpd8 power bar, it will put in the date that you run the template and won't change it again in future. So that's handy. The second one is author, who you signed into eXpd8 as when you're running this template. So if you log in as your initials, it can pull those initials in and make them part of the file code for you. The second drop down here is titled client title, and it gives you access to all of the data in relation to your client. Let's look here. If I double click the client, you'll see here as I open them up, every piece of information you capture on your client, it's in a separate field, and the reason is so that you can access them all separately here in your power bar. So if you want the title and the surname or just the first name, you can reference them from this drop down. The third drop-down is in relation to a contact. So let's say on a file we had a contact, so let's add in somebody here. Let's say find somebody else. I have multiple contacts there, 2 contacts. Whichever one I choose will be able to merge the data into the template when I run it. The fourth field here is relation to fields. And we'll come back to that, but that's the configurable area of eXpd8 where you get to decide what else would you like to capture. We did say this one was going to be a letter to our client. Well, let's look. I'm going to say here then I want my client's title here, followed by a space, client's first name, space, surname. The client could be a company, so I am in fact going to pick up the client's company name as well. Don't worry, if the client doesn't have any company name, the whole thing will concertina up and we'll have no gaps. Is H or home address 1, client H address 2. One of the common mistakes at this point would be to go from picking up H addresses or home addresses to work addresses. So just be conscious of that. Coming down a little, perhaps the next thing you might want in there is the date on the document. RRF, if on the summary page of the file you're using this as your RRF, your file code, that's available to you on the first drop down of your power bar. And it says there file code. So if we put our cursor where we want it, we go drop down, file code, And in fact, you might want a forward slash, and you might also want to reference the file owner. So that would be available to you too, in that you've got your case owner there. And then you might also want to reference yourself, who's typing the document. So that would be author. Then you might put dear, you might want to reference your client, dear, you can either be formal, title, space, surname, comma, return, or it could be title, first name, return. Leave the body text area. That's what you're going to put in whatever you want to type in that individual letter. And then always have your signature. And in fact, I would say to you, make that signature and the person's name, that should be really one of your auto texts so that you can use it over and over. Let's see how this template works in practice. So I'm going to X out of it. Do I want to save changes? Yes. Now remember, we'd created that in a criminal litigation file. So I can go to any criminal litigation file to run that and see how it works. So let's choose this file here to test our template out in. Now the first thing I want to make sure of is that there is some data there for it to merge. So yes, I do have a client on the file. I only have one line of an address though, so I can only expect one line of an address to be merged in. Into activity then, I'm going to go add, template. Now presuming you would have a multitude of templates there, you can search for the one you're looking for, put in any part of the name, and you can see here there how it finds it for me. Select the template, go next and finish, and it will go off into the background. It'll find the template document I'm looking for, and within the database, it'll find the data of that client to put into the document. And you can see there what it's come up with. As I've expected, details of that particular client. Now, it's worthwhile at this point in time when you're creating an initial template, spend a little bit of time, make sure it's absolutely correct. I would actually print it out onto your letterhead page to make sure it's perfectly aligned so that you don't have to faff and modify it each time you run it. You might also decide that parts of this, it's perhaps the wrong font, or some of it should be in bold, or there's something else different that is the company standard in terms of documentation. If that's the case, there's no point in changing this copy of the letter. We're going to close this copy, cancel it, I don't really want it, it was only a test, and back into template editor, and that's where you make the changes. So let's say I decide I want the RF to be in bold, and I might decide that it actually printed on the letterhead not quite correctly. I want it down a little bit. Okay, let's try that one out now. Close out of it. Do I want to save changes? Yes, please. Back into our file, and if we go again, add, template, letter to client home, and finish. Again, I print it out. Make sure it's correct. And it's ready then for you to put in whatever body text has been dictated. The good thing, though, is once you've spent a little bit of time and made your template, it's reusable over and over again in any file in criminal litigation, because that's where we created it. So again, in this case, I can go add, template, this template next, and finish. And it will pull in the details to do with this file. So it references the client on whichever file you used it in. So different file altogether, also ready for whatever body text I need to put in. Now in this particular template, you'll remember we referenced a client. It could have been, though, a contact. It could have been an opposing solicitor. It could have been a bank. It could have been any contact. And again, remember, going into our add-ins, that's where we have decided what to reference. If you've ever used Word's mail merge, that's basically what this is. And the power bar is what's giving you access to the data that you can pull in and reference. Now, generally, there are two things that can go wrong with a template. Either you've asked it to merge the wrong data, or there's no data there for it to merge. One other thing, though, if you are using documents that have been around for many years within your company, and you want to make those into templates in eXpd8. Bear in mind that those documents could, over time, have had their own preset macros or workflows built into them, that they could conflict with the macros or the mail merge that we're doing here within eXpd8. So sometimes I would say to you, if when you're trying to use an older document and make it into a template in eXpd8, sometimes you're better off, instead of importing it, starting from scratch, going right-click New, give it a name, and then paste in the body text you want of that document. Bear in mind, it doesn't have to be a simple letter. It could be a complex document. It could be a summons. It could be a family home declaration. One last neat thing to tell you about this, just to give you a sense of it. I'm going to come out of Template Editor for a moment. And let's go into a file. Fields. This is the customizable area of eXpd8. And the point of this is to give you the ability to create spaces to capture data yourself that you know you use over and over again. So a quick sense of this is going into Maintain. I'll create a background area. I'll give it a heading. And against that heading, I'm going to capture some key data. So let's say court record. Now, I could have a multitude of different things in here, but just to give you a sense of this one. So I'm in a file now. The file's in criminal litigation. There's my summary page. There's my people page. There's my activity page. And now I have a fields page, which obviously could have a lot more data than I put in there just now. Here's one of the handy things. If I now go into a criminal litigation file, do you remember of our power bar? The fourth one had been blank before. Once you create fields, they're available to you to reference within your template documents. Fields, by the way, should always be short, sharp bits of information. They're not clauses. So things like court record, the opposing solicitors, their reference number. In a conveyancing file, it could be the folio number, the county, the purchase price. Data like that would be handy to be able to type once in the file and merge over and over again into various documents.